Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday, July 9th. I'm John Weigell here with Sara Friedman, and you're listening to the Hustle Daily Show. The International Space Station is set to retire in 2030, and in its place will be a brand new one that is inflatable. The Large Integrated Flexible Environment, or LIFE, presents a big chance to space technology, but how will they get this inflated base up there, and what can it do differently than a hard-bodied station? We'll get to that in a bit, but first let's give you the hits and headlines today in business and tech. To start us off, Eli Lilly is buying Morphic Holdings for $3.2 billion to expand its drug offerings and compete in the multi-billion-dollar irritable bowel disease market. Spicy. Next, Boeing is taking a plea deal to avoid going to trial over two 737 MAX crashes, which, you may have heard about. The company will pay $243.6 million in fines and invest at least $455 million in compliance and safety measures. Okay, over the pond, Copenhagen is launching CopenPay, a new initiative that will reward climate-friendly tourists who support the city's green initiatives, which include biking, train travel, and also just generally cleaning up with free access to activities. So really exciting initiative there, Sara, I think.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because it's very much the opposite of what's happening in a lot of other places in Europe right now. Barcelona is aiming to ban short-term vacation rentals. We saw that Venice imposed a new day trip fee for tourists, and places like Majorca and Ibiza have new alcohol bans for tourists as well. So this is going against the grain in many ways and kind of enticing tourists to visit rather than fining them and trying to keep them away, and then having an environmental impact edge as well. I think this is interesting. And if it's successful, I could see this taking off in a lot of other places.
Yeah, it's a good way for Copenhagen to embrace maybe the tourists that a couple of other cities and countries no longer want. So kind of good marketing move on their part as well, trying to get more people there. I've never been there. I hear it's awesome, though.
Yeah, maybe it's time to get on a bike and visit.
Listen, I'll bike all the way over there if I have to. Okay, over to entertainment. Paramount Global and Skydance Media sealed their merger, putting Skydance CEO David Ellison in charge of iconic brands like Paramount Pictures, CBS, Nickelodeon, MTV, and much more. Skydance will invest $8 billion in the media company in total. Hopefully that can revive Paramount Plus a little bit. And finally, SpaceX won an $843 million NASA contract to destroy the International Space Station. I know what you're thinking. A little bit of a Star Wars mission here, but it's real. When the ISS is retired in 2030, a SpaceX-built spacecraft will actually guide the Space Lab out of orbit so it can just burn up upon reentry. And this is very applicable to our main topic for today. So I was very happy to see this. And speaking of that, on to the main story. Today, it's about space stations, or the space station. We've talked about the evolution of space tech before with the ability to grow veggies and even 3D print necessities while in space, but now it sounds like researchers will be able to do that in a new fancy inflatable environment. So Sara, what's the story behind this new inflatable space station?
Yeah, so a company called Sierra Space is building an inflatable space station that will be 250 miles from Earth. And as you mentioned, hopefully replacing the International Space Station when it's retiring at the end of 2030. So what makes this different is obviously the fact that it is inflatable. So it's called, the acronym is LIFE, and it launches to space inside of a rocket. And then it actually inflates to its full size once it's in orbit, which is pretty crazy, and what makes this so different.
Yeah, definitely different from what I was thinking, where you just kind of like you let go of a balloon and it just keeps going all the way up there. So I'm glad that there's, rocket science behind this instead of me. So very exciting. But is there any big differences, I guess, in this inflatable space station compared to the old International Space Station that I'm very excited to see the live stream of it burning in the atmosphere in a few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think what is major here is that it can just fit inside of a rocket and go to space. And it will eventually come in, I think, many different sizes. And we'll touch on that in a bit. But for this first iteration, it's the height of a 3-story building. It's 27 feet in diameter and it can fit 4 to 6 people. And the fabric itself is really high tech and amazing because obviously it is inflatable. So you're not sending a rigid structure into space.
Right.
So it's encased in 9 layers of textile. And that includes Vectran, which is a chemically woven material that's 5 times stronger than steel, which is pretty amazing. Wow. So that can protect astronauts from space radiation, pressure, and meteoroids, which you would definitely want to do.
Yeah. Oh, certainly. And what is the goal for how long people can stay in this space station? I know that there's like some sort of time limit to be placed on it, of course, just because of the human body. But for this new one, how long will researchers be able to stay?
Yeah, the idea is that one day people could live and work for weeks at a time in low Earth orbit. And I mean, this would one day have research labs, gyms full of exercise equipment, vegetable gardens. The idea is that you can kind of, have your normal 9 to 5 research day, make a salad, work out, and tuck yourself in at night. And this would be a place where you can do all of that. And yeah, as you touched on, microgravity helps scientists develop tech that literally can't exist on Earth. That's why all of this is so exciting. So there's a lot of groundbreaking work we've written about happening in immunotherapy, creating new drugs, 3D printing food, all of these things that has limitations on Earth because of gravity and the way that our planet works. So it would be pretty amazing to be able to have a safe and comfortable place to be able to do these things outside of Earth.
Yeah, definitely. And does the company Sierra, I mean, they have a few years, they have about 6 years to get this off the ground, literally. What do they have to do in order to start this project? Do they send up the rocket immediately and blow this up, or do they have to already have staff up there to receive it? How does that kind of work?
Yeah, so Life will be the second kind of iteration. The first is that Sierra just needs to get people to space and back, which obviously needs to happen before we can do anything else. So that's where Dream Chaser comes in. It's the first ever winged commercial space plane. And Sierra has a $3 billion contract with NASA. And the space plane should make its first unpiloted cargo delivery to the International Space Station in September. So that's a couple of months away. So that is well underway. And kind of once Sierra has that down, Dream Chaser would then start transporting people to the Life station. So that's how that would work.
Wow. Also with this innovation, I'm sure that there's going to be even crazier stuff on the horizon. Is there anything that Sierra is planning for beyond the general first voyage?
Yeah, I think once they have, ironed out the wrinkles here, the idea is to kind of get bigger and bigger with each iteration. So there's a larger prototype called the Life 5000, and that would inflate to 5,000 cubic meters once in orbit. So that's bigger than the entire International Space Station currently is. So big plans in the future. And the company is also working with Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin to build Orbital Reef, which would be a commercial space station and, quote, mixed-use business park, which we have to wonder what that will mean for return to office mandates. So for now, I'm going to stay excited about groundbreaking research in outer space and not worry yet about what that might mean for the future of work.
Yeah, excited to hear the announcement in a few years of a new Cupertino, California, in space with the new Apple headquarters,
Exactly.
Of course. But yeah, this is very, that last bit, a bit sci-fi. It seems like with the potential to even, it sounds like if you can work in space, you might be able to live in space. So this could be a very interesting first step towards that as a possibility as well.
Yeah, I think we have, at this point, many companies working towards a goal of living in space one day. So we'll see how far we get, but this is definitely a very cool step in that direction.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, and that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show, everybody. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get signed up at thehustle.co/email, and we'll see you tomorrow.